Thank you, Aditya. Thanks a lot. We did have this conversation some time back, and I was not sure whether it'll realize, because normally, the conversations do happen, but they never realize. So, but, thanks to you, we are here and we are going to discuss this very important topic. Sujata and myself, we have been working in this realm of public space design for last 10 years, 10 to 12 years. And we've kind of had a range of experiences in this area, working for many governments, government organizations. Sujata as well. Sujata has done a lot of work across India. We've also mentor people
Anuj, your voice
across
is
the
getting
country,
cut.
and it is. Okay, am I not audible properly?
Now you are.
Okay, so I'll just switch off my video. Sometimes there is an issue of bandwidth. I'm sorry for that. So we'll just start this without having too much to say. I think what we will do today in today's session, it is about designing public streets. We are going to go slow in this session. We are not going to rush through. That's number one. We are going to open up at any point in time whenever the audience feels, or anybody from the audience feels that they want to ask a question, then please do not hesitate. It can be a great question, it can be a profound question, it can be a very childish question, but I would really encourage you to not hesitate, and please ask the question. We are okay to stop anywhere in the middle, go back to a previous slide. Just feel free session. And it's not a one-way, we are not going to teach here, as Aditya put it. We are not going to teach here, we're going to only discuss. So please feel free, and stop us at any point in time. From now on, I will just share my screen. I'm going to be talking about the first two sections of this discussion, and then Sujata will take over, and at some point in time I'll take over. So we'll keep kind of everybody busy between us. So I'm now going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So starting off from here, so this is about an introduction to the streets. Now, we need to say anymore, state profoundly as to why streets are important. Now, why at all we need to design streets, or why streets should be designed at all. Street, all kinds of games. This used to be our open space when we were kids. We still use the streets for going from one place to the other. So why are we discussing so profoundly about streets? So just to give you an introduction about just a background, that this is what the streets used to be even in Europe. We do go for our vacation in Europe, but this is how our streets in Europe used to be. And Delhi is no different. In fact, the first top 10 cities of the world, I think the 4 cities of India figure in the most polluted cities of the top 10 cities of the world. Now, does this have any relation with the kind of streets we have? This is something, I mean, we can probably about and discuss. Obviously, we know that all our streets, the first thing that comes to mind when we go out on a road, we actually do not call a street, we actually call a street a road. And, in most of our vocabulary, generally speaking, we will always say that we're going out on the road, or let's go to the road and, go somewhere else. So what is a road and what is a street? I think that is a very important kind of demarcation there, a very kind of qualification there. Now, this is the picture that you see on your screen is actually a road space, but you can see how amazingly it has been taken over by pedestrians. Now, has it been taken over by pedestrians or has it been taken over by cars? Is another kind of question that we may ask ourselves. Like, do the cars need to be there, or should the pedestrians be there? And if we look at the ground, I have this as a picture from the top. I also have the same moment picture from the ground. So I'll show you this picture. You can see this picture. This picture, you can see that there is no footpath, absolutely no footpath. And I'll just go back and you can see the requirement of footpath. So, is there anything about provisioning or designing the street there? Sorry, is there somebody trying to say something? So, so basically, why to design streets? So the issue here is, maybe is it equity and it is environment. So these are the two things. I mean, the two things that which matter the most to us, and is mattering the most to us because of the heavy amount of air pollution that we breathe in every day. So it's the environment and it's equity at the same time. Equity meaning that there are competing users, Everybody wants a street space. So can we bring it to our streets? Now, this is the issue. What are the issues with our streets? So let's see who is using our street. I think what we generally consider is that, when we are driving a car, is that there should be nobody on the street except our car. And, everybody should clear off. But we are quite unaware, or maybe now we are aware after the COVID, that about 80% or 70 to 80% of a lot of informal sector is actually running our city. And this informal sector also uses the same street space, which we don't actually like them to use because, they're just in the middle of our path. So this also brings to the point that, whether we are looking at the streets in the right manner. A roadside vendor who actually gives water or actually provides food to a lot of people. Aditya, there's some noise. Can you please put somebody on mute? Yeah, thanks. So, the street vendors who are on the streets, do they have a place here? That particular telephone junction box that you see, does it have a place there? How do we park? Where do the goods vehicle go? Where do people walk? These are all the questions. Now, if we don't provide for them, obviously we are endangering their lives. And to make even the case even harder, you can see that the policeman is trying very hard to manage the traffic, and he's not able to because it's just not designed for the space is just not designed for him to operate properly. This is a reality. These guys are going about 20 to 30 kilometers in a single day, carrying cylinders on their bicycles. This is just a year back. This picture I took in Dwarka a year back. It's a reality of our time. Not everybody is having a car, but does our street actually support them? or make their lives easier? If at all we are not able to provide them vehicles, can we give them a dignified space? The buses, how they dock, where they stop, where do people board the buses, how do they board, how they get off of the buses, how the bus stands work. These are all part of our streets. How do they work, whether they work efficiently or not? I mean, these are again questions we see every day. And it's part of our life. The huge informal economy that is supported, they are all on our streets. They are not on, they're not in parks and gardens. They are on the streets. They are using our streets, and we are actually going and buying from them. So we and them, we need each other. But at the same time, we don't want to see them, or let's say most of our government or decision makers don't want to see them there. So how does that happen? I mean, how do we provide for equitable and uses which are complementary for the people, maybe for the economy as well? These guys who give vegetables and milk, bring milk to your doorstep, these are also one of the street users. And a family on bicycle, I think we've kind of forgotten about them completely. I mean, I don't think for most of us they actually exist, because we never see them, and or we never even you know I hello yeah or we never ever pay attention to whether they are there on the street or not. So forget about upgrading their life. We are not even talking about that. Let's not go into livelihood at this point. We are only talking about, if they have a bicycle, if they are on with the family, is it safe enough for them to be on our road? Are we okay if they get killed or they get injured? Are we okay with that? Or do we want to give them dignified space? And mind you, 30% of people are still poor in our cities. So that's a very big number. And that's the general, just a general picture of a intersection. I mean, this could be anywhere. This could be anywhere in any city. Lucknow, it could be Bareilly, it could be Ahmedabad, it could be Gujarat, and what have you. I mean, it could be anywhere. So, are we sort of looking at only vehicles? Is that our deal? Is that what we think that the road is all about? Or are we even considering that there are other people who also want to use it, and who definitely have an equal right provided by our constitution? So basically, when we are looking at a street space which is essentially all mixed traffic, how do we divide our street so that it becomes an equitable distribution, so that all the other users also find their space and they don't really have to compete with the demands of a vehicle? So we are going to talk about a little more in detail on this. This was just a general dive into the issue. And it's not a bad idea to actually look at some great streets and how they perform, why they are so great. So let's say this street in Geneva. Now, this was actually a vehicular street a few years back, about a decade back, when they thought that probably this connects to a metro, to a tram station, and the people and the government thought that probably people are actually going to access the tram station. They come in huge numbers. It's the best place for the pedestrians to be. So why not make it pedestrianized? And actually, once you got them into making a pedestrian street, the restaurants and the shops actually they actually went even better. So it's a very beautiful now a street. It's covered, shaded, and it's a nice environment. Aditya, could you please mute somebody? Aditya, can you please mute? There's somebody called JMP who's unmuted. Yeah, thanks. And this is the street in Seoul. I mean, you have the road space, but at the same time, you can see the walking environment, which is so comfortable. At the end of the day, if I am to actually take my vehicle out, I would think twice. I would rather walk because it's such a beautiful, shaded, and a nice environment to walk. I can even use my bicycle. I can park it at where I want. So it's a nice, beautiful, uh, but a very comfortable street environment. Of course, only pedestrian streets are having their own pleasure. They have their own romance. Because you just see so many faces. You just interact with so many faces all the time. Sorry, there's a constant noise from the background. Hmm. Yeah, so the pedestrian spaces are actually having their own kind of romance, is what I was talking about. Why do they have their romance? Why? Because you're not inside a car and the other person is not inside a car. You can actually see each other and you can pass by each other. Well, romantically speaking, I would even say that you can smell the perfume. If you're just passing by a nice together. So basically, these all these street spaces are actually nice places for people to interact, nice places for people to see each other, and nice. It becomes a social kind of a space for people to be. So although we are landscape architects and we definitely we appreciate the trees, but even for the trees to exist, you can see that on a very heavy traffic road, the trees actually face a lot of trouble because they have to face pollution. The leaves of the trees actually get coated with dust all the time. But look at a pedestrian environment and look at the trees which happen here, and they're actually joyful, easily maintainable. This is the kind of street, this is the poster which attracted you to come to this seminar in the first place. This is the street designed by Sujata. So the point is that, once we can appreciate these walkable environments a little more once we have them. And that's what even the Karolbag experiment was all about. It's about giving space back to the people. And I want to talk about the great which is the Times Square in New York. If people have been to New York about, I think 2010, 2011, you've seen what was Times Square back then. It was just a huge amount of traffic, a huge amount of space given to vehicles. And it was even a large, bold idea like this can also happen. It can transform a very large traffic environment into a very large public space. And this was done by none other than the Commissioner of Transport, who was at that point when the Blue administration was in power. So this was done. There's a huge transformation of New York streets took place in 2010, 11, and a lot of space was taken away from the vehicles and given back to the pedestrians. So the point here is that these great streets are great because they get people back into the space, and they make their lives more comfortable. They give them more dignity, and obviously it's better for commerce as well. So actually they're adding more value to the space that was previously being used by cars. So now I would just come to the point where let's have, what do we do about our environment? How do we achieve this? I mean, we have looked at our issues. Of course, we are bogged down all the time with the constraints that you step out of the home and you are going to stumble upon a brick, or you're going to go into a pothole or something. But definitely, to avoid that, you would better get into a car. You don't want to walk in a very bad environment, and it is but natural that you would actually get into a car. So how do we do that? I mean, why do we even talk about this? So let's say now we get into that part of this presentation or this part of the discussion where we say that okay, you've got a project. Let's say you bagged a project from the government to design a street. Where do you begin? What are the steps you take? I think this is what we are going to cover in this. And please stop us at any point in time, as I said before. Um, so I'm going to be talking about the first part of this, and then I'm going to be giving this, baton to Sujata to take it over. So this is the first part. When you get a project, let's say you've bagged a competition or you've bagged a project, and you kind of start at you've been given a street. So what do? I used to be very confused when 12 years back when I was given such a project. I did not know where to start actually, because there was just too much of traffic all the time. There was you've got like cars coming in all the time, like commercial streets, and so much of people coming in. There's so much of parking. It is so difficult to even imagine what this street could be. So it was always a very difficult point to start. Yeah, even today, like a year back when we started doing the Karol Bagh experiment, even at the time when we had already done the envisioning, it was still difficult for us to imagine that it can transform, because it's just too mind-boggling. All this traffic and parking and everything. It's too mind-boggling for all of us. But having
तुझ्या पॅन्टला काहीतरी लागलेलं आहे
ওটা বেরিয়ে যাবে, এটাতে বেরিয়ে যাবে।
Yeah, thanks. So I was saying that even if we are being bogged down, I think it is extremely important for us to step back and to close our eyes and then to think as to what we want the street to, this space to be, because that's the starting point. Not really. Well, this is what I have personally kind of always found, that sometimes it's better to start with an idea, with with the objective of what you want to create and why you want to create it, instead of trying to solve smaller, instead of try, yeah, I request everybody to please not unmute your mic, because it just creates a lot of disturbance. And I'm not, it breaks my train of thought. So, anyways, so I was just saying that, I think the first step when you are given a street project is to try and envision your street, is to try and step back and see or think about what best you can do with that public space, because that public space means a lot for a lot of people, and there's a lot of users. So basically what it should be, what you want it to be, and what everyone wants it to be. So this is a place where you actually create that dialogue, and create that vision for that place, and you engage with all the stakeholders and build a vision with them, or sell them a vision, whichever way you want to do it. But essentially, the first place to start is to actually create a vision for a street. So let's say, what is a creating? What does creating a vision mean? So say, for example, this is a place in Delhi which was given to you, and this is the vision I created for it. That what you see here is actually a huge intersection with a huge road there. But what I see it as is actually a huge public space, a huge public space which is connected to the shop fronts. So I'm actually standing on top of a shop taking this picture, and I'm imagining what this space can be. and it can be a huge public space instead of being a traffic junction. Right? Say, for example, this is a place near the metro station. What this place can transform to be? Do I want cars here all the time, or do I want people to come and be happy about being near the station? Maybe just eat out from a lari or a galla, and just sit there. Your bicycles or your rickshaws can actually come and drop you there, and actually have a large plaza. So what do you want this place to be? So I think this vision, creating of this vision, is actually probably gives you some clues as to how you would want your space to actually behave after it has been done. So one of our teammates, Shri, also worked on this project with me. On this is Shri Nayak. He's also a landscape architect, based out of Delhi, part of our group, and he also worked on this project of transformation of Dwarka Sector 12. So together, we kind of worked on this, tried to create a vision as to what the place outside the metro station can look like or feel like. This is again kind of a place where a lot of vehicles come. This is a what can happen here. The moment you create a vision or you create some sort of a choice for people to start thinking on some lines, and I think that's a very good, that's a very important start, because you need to start, seeding an idea into everybody's mind, including the decision makers, including the stakeholders, because not everybody can imagine what you can imagine. So it's good to seed an idea into everybody's head, almost like an inception, and then work on it, and then kind of try to build a dialogue, have a lot of meetings, have site meetings, and then create that vision, create a collaborative vision, have everybody to buy into that vision, and move forward before you actually start to design anything. So from here, I'll just let Sujata take on the reins. We're going to talk about the network and the street design, everything she's going to kind of go deep into. Sujata, you can please take on. Do you want me to keep sharing yourself?
No, Anuj, I'll share.
Okay, great.
Is the screen there? Aditya, can you see the screen?
We can see your WhatsApp.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay.
Now we can, yes.
Yeah.
Let's take a minute. Please mute yourself, everyone.
Were we here, Anuj?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so Anuj gave a fantastic introduction to this whole, basically what street is in our, cities, and they're basically, help us to move around and help us. Also, it is the most contiguous public space in our city, and how we look at doing of the street is to look at the whole, space as part of a larger system. Now that larger system, we cannot, as landscape architects, we cannot look at it only from the landscape design point of view. So we have to look at it from urban design, transport planning, landscape design, sometimes conservation, sometimes hydrology. So there are many layers that come into it. So we have to look at it from all aspects. So broadly, when we start, if we are given kind of either a street or a street network, we look at the whole zone around. And then from there on, generally in Delhi, we have very little mixed use, and we have very specific residential zones and commercial pockets and all of those. So we understand the typology of the area.
Sujata, can I just interrupt? Can you go to full screen mode for a second?
Where do I go?
Sujata, can you go to present? Top right, you see present.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Anuj, can you explain this? Okay, so basically, this is a more of a New York kind of a grid, which is easy for like people to walk and to orient themselves. And in the center, this kind of a street network is more of a kind of a suburban model. So, for people to go from one place to another, it is a little difficult. And even the right one, the number of nodes basically are less. So it is difficult for a person to go from one place to another. So the network of a street is very important. Anuj, you can explain this.
Sure. So essentially, why when, as I said, that probably you are given a street project. So what do you do? And do you only look at your street, or do you look at a whole area? So that's what Sujata was also explaining, that when you are given a street, or we are given a street, then it is better to actually look at an entire area or a system of streets, how they work together, because sometimes you may find some opportunities which are on neighboring streets, or because of the neighboring streets, you may find some opportunity on your street to do something. So that's why the system of street connections is extremely important, to look at how vehicles move, how people move, and maybe if there are disconnections between the street networks, you would want to address that in your project, that you would want to, reconnect those disconnections. So let's say, for example, this is a primary street network. Generally see that you always have a primary street network which is consisting of large roads. But generally, Sujata, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, generally the secondary road network is something that is missing, the smaller street, and the smaller street is something that you would want to reinstate in your design, so that your smaller streets are actually where people are able to walk through, cut through the space and actually connect to the rest of the grid. So if you want to go in for a more walkable environment and a more cyclable environment, you definitely need these smaller grids. And these smaller grids are generally spaced around 100-meter apart. And that's a that's a good distance. Like if I can say that the distance between two blue lines, or distance between a blue line and a red line, is generally around 80 to 100 meters. And that's a good place for a good walkable uh, grid environment. So go next, Sujata. Yeah, and that's what happens when you build a flyover. So I wanted to give this example here. This is a slide out of UTPEC, and it was when the Ames flyover was constructed. Before the Ames flyover, you could just cross the road very easily. But after the Ames flyover has come, your distance of crossing the road has become 5 times. And that's certainly, that's not going to encourage you to walk ever. You would immediately take your two-wheeler or take a rickshaw or take a car. Definitely you would not like to walk this distance. So the problem of flyovers, the problem of breaking the grid of the street, is that immediately your walking environment increases, your walking distance increases, and therefore discourages you from walking. So this is a very important aspect. Now
Actually,
this, yeah, please.
Anuj, I would like to add here, there's another thing that has happened. Now that the East Kidwai Nagar project is also happened here, the earlier project had more of a better street grid than right now. East Kidwai Nagar is like a full, group housing colony with a proper boundary wall. So the earlier network is also gone. So like people anyway can't, go across very easily. Apart from the flyover also. So, like different aspects of how it affects the street usability.
And in a smaller scale, I would add here that in a smaller scale, let's say if you're not building a flyover, but in a smaller scale, what happens is that you build a road divider, and suddenly your road divider, because of the construction of the road divider, you're not able to go across. You're not able to cross the street because the road divider now prevents you. That again is going to break your network of street connections. So a general thought in everybody's mind is we need more speed. We need more speed on the road, and therefore let's just cordon off the entire street as much as possible. So we do a road divider. Now what happens is that whenever you do a road divider, it not only channelizes your own road, which means that you can't really spread around a little bit if you want to, but most importantly, it breaks your grid. So basically, you can't go across. Suddenly, you have to take a larger detour, and most importantly, you are not going to be able to cross the street. So it's all against going against walking. So now this example I want to come to is the Karolbagh example. The reason why Ajmal Khan Road was pedestrianized or could have been pedestrianized, one of the big reasons is that there was a network of streets which was available, and this network of street is like every street is around 80 meters apart. Now this gives a very nice gridded environment where in case you want to miss a turn, you can take the next turn very easily at a very short distance. And therefore, it's not a big detour for anybody. And this is what was one of the reasons why Ajmal Khan Road could be pedestrianized. While you can see that on the screen, you can see that it was only the street which was pedestrianized. It is not the intersection. So you can still have traffic. So you can still have cross traffic, but the street is kind of pedestrianized. Now, if you remember my last presentation, if some of you were there, I did speak about Lajpat Nagar in the same vein. So Lajpat Nagar also wanted to be pedestrianized, but we had asked them that no, you cannot pedestrianize completely. The reason being that this kind of grid is not available in Lajpat Nagar, and therefore no detours are possible. And therefore, when you're deciding upon what is the fate of your fate of the street not just depends on the street itself, it depends on the other streets which are neighboring. So this diagram again just tells you, and that's why the vision of a more pedestrian walkable environment on the Ajmal Khan Road could have been created 10 years from now, 10 years back when UTPEG actually proposed this. So when UTPEG approved this particular thing. Yeah, please.
So basically, we start. How do we again, like coming back to how do we start? We started with networks, and the studies that we have to kind of do is one is the network at a kind of a smaller scale, and for certain roads, like we were doing a road in which we had to look at the larger network also. So one of the roads that we are doing is an arterial street. Now, arterial street is basically a street which joins, uh, two colonies or something which are slightly further apart, and it does not again have a network. So there you can have higher speeds. So basically, we have to kind of categorize the streets in our city as arterial, subarterial, collector, as per the as per the speed and the what is the function they perform. So there is this code of practice of IUT which is available, MOUD guidelines, which we follow right now for the detailed design. It's a very good guideline. And there is UTPEG street design guideline also. And IRC urban roads guideline, I think is just about in its final stage. So, some guidelines about what should be the lane width as per the speed of the vehicle. So if you have a higher speed, you need a wider lane width. So once we do the, the width of the street, and we look at the network, and we also have to look at the hierarchy, as Anuj also told you earlier. Then we also have to look at what are the, if we have, like in this case, we were doing a particular street. So we had to study the kind of junctions which were there. The four-way junction, two-way junction, T-points, and at what distance the vehicular junction is at. And then if we require that cut, what Anuj was saying, the person, even a vehicular, a detour is very long if you have to take. So all of those things, we have to make sure that the junctions are at a particular distance, not very far away from each other. So this is our analysis of the vehicular junctions, and where we can add another junction. After that, we do, of course, a very detailed site analysis and reconnaissance survey of the area that we are studying, which includes parking analysis, land use, open space identification. I would also like to add, Aditya, if anybody has any questions, they can ask by unmuting themselves. Somebody can maybe look at it, or, any particular issue which you want us to elaborate, we'll be happy to do that.
You okay with people interrupting you for questions?
Yeah. This is a workshop, so like we are okay with people interrupting, not an issue. But we don't want any background noise if somebody's just joining in. But questions are most welcome.
I'm trying to mute people as they join in, but as you ask questions.
Yeah, so somebody can ask questions on the chat box as a, like, maybe raise their hands or whatever, so that they can ask questions in the middle, because it may continue for a longer time. So this is again a detailed activity analysis of all the activities that happen on the road. And in this case, there was a metro station. The metro station has its own ecosystem. So it has the vendors, and it has, the rickshawalas, auto rickshaws. So you have to do a very detailed activity analysis of the junctions, the nodes, all of those things. Then, of course, strategically you have to also, allocate spaces and kind of design it according to that. In one of our projects, we also engaged with the community, and we tried to understand from, community engagement about what are the problems they are facing, and we came up with a kind of a list of the problems and what are the possible solutions, kind of thing. And of course, we have, once we do the, we look at the area, we have to do the survey and all. Now, whenever we do a street, we look at the land use, and we look at the edges. And how the edge responds to the street is very important. And if, the edge, and if the edge responds to the street. So we want the street edge to respond to the built environment. So how do we do that? A lot of times there is a disconnect. So why does that disconnect happen? And also when we look at streets, once we do a land use analysis, so there are character areas which are given. So for example, one of the streets that we were doing, so these are the various typology of character zones that we identified. So then it became very clear for us to further on develop the design. So the character zones, one part of the street has a marketplace. So this character will be totally different from the area near the cantonment, which is a more of a quiet place. So the character analysis as per the land use and everything also has to be done. So how do we start the street design? These are the various guidelines that we already have. So as I told you, the MOUD guideline, the UTPEC, these are the two main guidelines. We have the cycling guideline also. Pedestrian guideline is also very good. We have ourselves contributed in the urban drainage guideline. Anuj, I haven't yet put the landscape guideline. That is also very good. I think all of us worked on that IRC landscape guidelines and the roundabout guidelines. So these are the guidelines that we follow because there are certain standard things that we should maintain in the road design. So again, part of the visioning that, if you have this kind of a road, then what are the options? So sometimes somebody tells us to make multiple options that with parking, with parallel parking, with angular parking, all of those options we have to kind of figure out. So what are the parameters of walkable streets? Basically, we have to look at a continuous moving space. We have to look at comfort and we have to look at safety. So continuous means barrier free, of course. If you have any steps or something, that has to be removed. And a lot of places, the footpaths are missing, especially in the neighborhood zones and all. Now, what happens is that if you want a continuous footpath, you can have. So this was this is like a parking entry, and still we had at grade footpath entirely. Then all of these elements which Anuj had also shown, these trees and these pillars and all, they are required. They are part of the street design. So how do we incorporate them? So there is a zone within the street called the multi-utility zone. So that can be used. So one is a moving zone and one is a activity zone, you can say. So it can house all your activities, your trees, your parking, anything, So this is what I was just talking about. So even in a narrow street, you could have that. You could have like a walking space and a multi-utility zone. And then you have these vendors. These are required. It's not that vendors, a lot of times people want to just remove vendors and all. But it's like, they're living, their livelihood is on the street. So we need to incorporate them. And they can be incorporated into the multi-utility zone. We also have to talk about safety. Now, what makes a street unsafe is basically, of course, less lighting at night. And we have this obsession with boundary walls. So like, what are the possibilities of removing or reducing the height of boundary walls so that the edges are more transparent? Okay, so when we do the analysis, of course, we look at the metro stations and all. So I now come to parking. Parking is a very.
I want to add here, Sujata, just a small point that one of the reasons why the Nirbhaya case happened, the Nirbhaya case happened because we can consider what they were doing. They were actually on a main street which was not very well lit. It was a high-speed road. They specifically took the they took the arterial, which is a high-speed road, so that they can go around the city while they were in the bus. And they dropped the bus. They took him at a place which was absolutely, but it had no light or no visibility from the surrounding area. Now, this is very important for us to know, because what we are trying to talk about here is that the compound wall or any such obstruction which actually makes your plot or the street invisible from each other, disconnected from each other, is actually a good boost to any kind of crime. Like I'll tell you that when I live in Dwarka, I myself, male or a man, I feel scared, walking in the night, because there is no lighting, and even if there is some lighting, there is a huge distance between the street and the buildings, because there's a boundary wall, there's a huge setback, and all of that. So actually, your street is very, very unsafe if you do not have visibility on the street and you don't have lighting. I mean, those are very, very important or very critical to be understood.
So next point we wanted to discuss was parking. Now, what happens is our urban design or our basically space, private space in our cities have a front setback. So that front setback is kind of used for parking. Now, even service roads that are there, so those are also used for parking. Any space which is like an extra space in our city is used for parking. So this is kind of one of the faces of the city that we see parking. And do we enjoy the view? Do we like to see parking, or we would like to see something else? So this is a project that we are doing in which you have to identify when you're talking to government authorities and all, you have to identify optional parking lots which are at the back of a building or at the underground, or or vertically you can stack it up so that the footprint of the parking and the importance of the parking space it gets reduced. So every time you remove a bit of parking, you actually take up a large chunk of space in our public realm for the people. So again, like we identify parking lots, and then this is a project in Narayana under the flyover. Because there is no other parking space, they are using this as a parking lot. But we also have to look at Narayana as a colony does not have too much of open spaces. So we realize that open spaces are more important, and then we can actually stack up the parking like this. So we looked at parking in such a way so that this entire space can become more usable. This is, I think, Dwarka only, no, Anuj? Where,
Yes.
yeah. So this again, like what I was talking about, the setback and the setback of the building and the service road. So this whole thing becomes like a parking lot. So what are the options to kind of remove or reduce parking? So this is a transformation that they've done. Now we come to the road cross section. As I earlier had mentioned that according to the speed of the vehicle, the lane widths are kind of mentioned. So the higher the speed, the wider the lane width has to be. So again, like arterial, subarterial, that way we had to decide the lane width. So we have to kind of optimize everything so that we get enough footpath. And in certain areas, we have enough space, unnecessarily too much of tar space is there. Like we are doing a project where the yellow portion is something which we are going to reclaim as a pedestrian and cycling space, because this is what you require of the carriageway. So basically what they have done is they have just increased the capacity out here in the center. Whereas you just need more of a streamlining rather than increasing capacity at certain, so it basically creates bottlenecks. If you don't have streamlining, then it creates bottlenecks. People think that road ko patla kar diya, road ko chauda kar diya, all your traffic problems will get resolved. But you have to look at the overall, in the overall length, what is the, road width. And according to that, you have to set the standards of your road widths. So again, like we are doing the marking of the road according to what is there. And then I next come to service road. Now, service road is a standard item which are given on arterial roads where they are kind of not required also, where you don't have any entries to properties and everything. And this is a road in near CP called Barakhamba Road. There is a service road, and there is a very few entries to the plots because the plot sizes are very big, and there's metro station, and there's very little space for the people to walk. So we have to prioritize people over this thing. And in certain places, we of course require service roads. And how do we make a footpath and the service road continuous? We have to look at. And especially in shop fronts and all, we prefer not to have a service road because it's going to be misused like this. So we're going to remove service roads from here. And of course, for certain plotted development, you do require service road. So there you can give a thinner service road. The service road is mainly for access to property. Okay, now cycle track, again you have the IRC guidelines. What are the desirable width for, you can go through the guidelines to get the width and all. And whether it is possible for you to get a segregated cycle track or not. And what is the typology of the street? Is it an arterial street? If it is an arterial street, it is better to have a segregated cycle track because the speed of the street, the vehicular speed will be higher. So protected cycle track is desirable out there. Now, this is a project we have done in JM Road, in which come what may, like we have got a legible cycle track going through. So, cyclists require legibility. And how the cycle track opens at the junctions is also very important for the cyclist to use the cycle track. So, it has to be quite inviting. So, all of those nuances of, cycle track design is something which, in fact, I would like to acknowledge a lot of things that we have learned about street design is from Sandeep Gandhi, who is a transport planner. He's worked with Geetam Tiwari for many years, and even from Anvita Arora, we have learned a lot. So there has been an ecosystem of people who we have learned from over the years. For urban design, of course, Romy Roy, and so many people, but these are the first people, and Pradeep Sachdeva, the god of public space design. So, Anuj, this?
Yeah, similar transformation, basically dividing the road space into for bicycle lanes and everything.
Yeah, this is due, no?
That's right.
Now, footpath, as per the guidelines, it says that we should have, clear 1.8 walking space for footpath. But we have to realize that 1.8 is the clear walking space. So it is like if you have some elements in the middle or something, so it should not be, it should be an unobstructed, walking space for the people. And where we have the pedestrian crossing, as Anuj said, that desirable distance of pedestrian crossing is at around 100 meters. We can go up to maximum 150 meters. Then, of course, barrier-free environment. Typically, when we do a government project, the first thing we have to do is reduce the height of the curb. The curb, basically the footpath and the curb is made as per the drain, stormwater drain, which is there on the roadside. So first we have to reduce the height and then, make it barrier free. And the whole idea is that any property entry has to be seamless. So if there is a pathway, cycle track, so this part should be seamless if it is a minor, entry. So if you people have like this, for example, so this is like seamless. The pathway goes through. So it's like, who are we giving more importance to? We are giving more importance to the pedestrian. The cars can go inside. That's not an issue. But this person has a flat walking space for movement.
Sujata, can I just interrupt for a second about the footpath? I was curious about the curb height. And I
Yeah.
noticed around the time of the Commonwealth Games, all the curbs in Delhi were changed to 12-inch curbs. And was there a reason? Someone told me it had to do with, stopping cars from parking on the footpaths. It was a deterrent. There was a reason
No,
that was done.
no, Commonwealth Games, in fact, before that, the curb heights were very high. They were like 2 feet or
When
something
I was
in a lot
growing
of
up,
places.
they were all 6 inches when I was growing up in Delhi. I noticed they took out all the
That
6-inch curbs and they
that
replaced them
was
with
when you
12-inch
were
curbs.
growing up, it would be 6 inches. Then they made it like 2 feet or something.
Yeah.
Then, especially the roads that we did, we got it back to 6 inches. But these people don't follow the standards, regularly. The engineers whom we explain them, they do it, and then they are kind of back to square one. What they know, like they'll make the drain, and they'll according
What
to
is the
that.
reason? What is the reason they're following this high standard?
Anuj can discuss.
Yeah,
Anuj?
Aditya, to answer your question, it's that this is probably the reason. The reason is management. Actually, we are,
Hmm.
in most of the cases, we are trying to solve management issues by design, and that is the reason why we increase the height of the curb. Now, even for cycle tracks, one of the major, you can say, the blowback that we receive is actually from the traffic police, is because the traffic police will have to manage the cycle tracks and see where the cyclists are. So those are the issues where we need to still kind of put a lot of effort to try and convince all the authorities that let's just follow the standards which have been laid down by IRC or MOUD, and because those are about comfort and those are about encouraging use of cycles and pedestrian walking space, and the management should be left to maybe the police, bringing in more like traffic wardens, or they will be using better technology, like cameras or anything, to actually kind of penalize the people. So I mean, that's where the more struggle really lies at the moment.
And if I just follow up, my basic understanding is giving that extra freeboard in the drain doesn't help at all. I don't think. So there's
That's
no
the
reason the
first
drain needs a one
thing.
and a half foot lid on top. The water is at the
Another
bottom.
thing, Aditya, I think answering your question regarding why it doesn't happen is that typically in many cities of the developed world, they have very detailed street design guidelines. There have been street design guidelines in of different cities like Pune and Chennai and all, but still they are very generic. Even UTPEC street design guideline is generic. Now, if we have specific street design guideline for Delhi, so I don't know, like I have told the PWD people many a times, if we can have that your curb height should be that much, or this is the design that you follow. Every city, like if you go to Barcelona has a specific kind of curb, and their standards are kind of set. So they can very well have a standardized street design guide, not a guideline, rather a street design book in which they can, all of the engineers can refer to specific, details. So that,
We need one book for the whole nation.
I don't know.
One said, I understood it was the low floor buses. They thought now the low floor buses have been introduced. That if the bus stop was raised higher, then the people would come in directly into the bus. But the
It
bus
did
never
help.
stopped. But the
It
bus
did
never
help.
stops at the bus
Yes.
stop in any case. So now you
But
see a
still,
lady in a
yeah,
sari trying to get down, an old lady in a sari trying to get down a 12-inch curb and run
exactly.
towards a bus.
Can I just answer that?
Yes, please.
Actually, this is one fight we had so much for almost 5 years. This discussion happened with every kind of engineer in every government body. But at the end of it, it seems there are two reasons. One, of course, is the parking thing. They feel that cars nahi aani chahiye upar. Dusra, it is just bad workmanship. Because if you see the detail of the curve, that is around 250, I think the depth, the overall depth is 400 mm, I think, the depth of the curve. They simply don't. The half the curb is supposed to go niche, under the ground. They are supposed to dig that hole.
Yeah, they don't.
And they have to dig it and put it inside. They just don't do that because there is no standard for workmanship and there is just nobody's there. So जो वहाँ mason होता है, वो खड़ा होता है, उसको जो केक की तरह उसको लगा के चला जाता है. So this is basically just lack of workmanship and ethics, work ethics. You know, there's not much you can do about that.
In San Francisco, there's a division just for streets and sidewalks, just like the PWD is called the Streets and Sidewalks Department. Is such a thing necessary?
Sorry. Yeah, Sujata's projects you will never find this because she stands on the ground and she, you know, makes sure that it's done right. And they are scared of her. But then not everybody is like, you know, standing raat bhar ground pay, and it's just left to the engineers of the PWD. And the other unfortunate thing is that there is no education stream, neither urban design, non-landscape, nor engineering, nor civil engineering, which teaches you how to design and construct a street.
Yeah.
So it is everybody like is on their own and doing their own interpretations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's why we need more landscape architects to join in this.
Yeah, so another thing I wanted to add about landscape architects is that because of our knowledge, because we have gone through this entire course of landscape design and maybe worked in a landscape architect's office, we are very good at details, you know. So when we do the design of the street and everything, we understand in terms of the actual, you know, how it's going to be executed also, which I feel that in the urban design course, they may not teach that. So I've been talking to the urban design department in Sushant, where I also teach that, you know, there has to be more synergy between the landscape and the urban design department so that, you know, both of us or even the transport department can kind of work together, because it has to be looked at collectively, you know. There is like, there are, in this picture only, there are so many things which are transport, landscape, urban design, you know. So like, how do you kind of divide it up into different streams? So so this is what I was saying, that multi-utility zone in this case basically is like parking. Earlier the parking was allowed to just go to the boundary wall. Of course, we carved out the space of the walkway and everything. So the mid-block crossing would look like this, where we reduce the speed of the vehicle so that where the pedestrian crossing happens. At certain locations, like the railway track is coming or something, so we did not have an option of a pedestrian, you know, at-grade pedestrian crossing. So in this Kirtinagar project, we are proposing a skywalk along the flyover. The flyover does not have a footpath. So this project will happen soon. So here we are, you know, proposing a skywalk along the flyover. Now, again, the junction design, it's all there in the MOUD, you know, guideline book again. So if this is your existing junction, how the cycle track opens and how, you know, people cross and where are the various elements of the streets are kind of given. It's kind of worked out. This, in fact, we used to go to Sandeep's office and sit together and then figure out the lane width. And basically out here, if you see, this is 3.3. The lane width, the bus lane is 3.3 meters, and then the MB lanes are 3.1, 3.1. So like, and how much the waiting for the cyclists, you know, all of this, where the cyclists will wait. So all of these, like, we have worked out in detail, is kind of made it standard now. But again, like, if you look at the guidelines, you have a kind of a straight junction, but sometimes on site we are faced with different geometrics. So we have to, this is Madhuban. There is an underpass out there. So how do we, you know, cross? So the various junctions require, of course, at site and with the survey drawing, we have to look at the junction in a different way. This is a junction at the Pusa crossing, where it's absolute chaos. Now there's like a metro line on top, and anything goes out here. So there's a lot of traffic jam and a lot of confusion. So this junction has been designed by Sandeep, and then I sent it to Anuj and Romi for review. So they said that you should have this kind of a crisscross pedestrian, walkway, because from Karol Bagh and all also a lot of people, come, and then basically should be more people friendly, because this is a huge space. To cross it, we need like the shortest distance. So yeah.
Do we have a philosophical stance on slip roads? Are they useful to us at all? I mean, Delhi is full of them. They just cut a little corner for park, create a little slip junction. Should we oppose those?
We have a philosophical stand that we should not have slip roads, but we haven't kind of managed to convince the authorities against them, especially in arterial roads. I remember we used to go during the Commonwealth Games time also, and talk them out of it. But certain places we have managed to convince them. So it's like a iterative process. So I don't think they are totally bought into the idea of not having slip roads.
But it's clear to us they're not useful, right?
Yeah. So this is a junction in Pune called JM Road. So there was a traffic island out here, and this road was one way. So you just needed a movement on one side, and this part of the road was just lying idle. So we aligned the street in such a way that the island became a part of the street. Once you made the island a part of the street, it was just lying unutilized. Then it became a public space. So there were like two junctions out there. So both of them, like, people could not even understand where we got the space from. It's like, reclaiming space from the unnecessary space from the vehicles. So whenever we look at a project, where do we start our alignment from? So basically we started from the center line mostly, but it depends. So in this case, there were the metro columns, and how we start the center line, and what is the right of way. The right of way is the public's road space. Now, public road space should have your carriageway, footpath, and for arterial road, especially the cycle track. Now, what people do is, the right of way generally is just carriageway. So, like that thought of actually having equitable space for all the people hasn't yet kind of come. So then, according to the right of way space which is there, we allocate the lane width, we allocate the footpath, we allocate the cycle track. So this was what was there earlier. Then
Sujata, just go back, please. One slide where you have this one, the section.
Section. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we can take a moment, because for people to just absorb this. So essentially here, even the bus has a space. There is space for vendors, there's space for people, there's space for a cycle track. So all of that is
moved. This slide, the center line has moved.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So what is the kind of material that we use in our projects? We made a huge mistake during the Commonwealth Games. I was a novice, so I used vitrified tiles, which is not a very long-lasting materials, and it's kind of broken all over the place. So we need to really use sturdy materials, tamper-proof, and tamper-free, whatever. So with that, you have to look at the aesthetics and everything. And the kind of bollards and all which are there. So here, if you look at, this is St. Mark Streets in Bangalore, done by Jana. So here they've got a wider space for the the wheelchair accessibility, and the rest of this is narrower. Okay, so coming back to utilities, now the stormwater drain, on the basically the road, apart from carrying the movement of people and vehicles and everything, it also carries all the utilities like stormwater drains and other electrical pipes and everything. Uh, Despite that, you have a lot of flooding problems, especially now that during this monsoon also we have seen in Delhi this has happened. And here I feel that landscape architects can really make a huge difference, and how we, kind of design a street in such a way that a big part of it we can, give it for actually localizing the stormwater. So how do we do it? Like whatever space is green space is there on our street, we try to incorporate, the stormwater there. We design a curve accordingly. We make, the bioswales. We try to slow down the water. We try to spread it and we try to soak it right there. And the overflow of the entire water then goes to the existing drain. So whenever we do a project, this is our strategy in which, first the water goes into the green areas and then it goes to the existing drain, the overflow. Even in this PWD, project that we are doing, so there is already a depressed area. We are not going to fill it up. So this area is going to be like a stormwater drain. But the problem out here happens is the ownership of, the green areas sometimes is not with the road owning agency. Now this is a road by PWD and the park is by MCD. Now we have to have, talks with the various departments so that actually both the departments can manage the stormwater. In this case, the lower photograph, luckily we have enough space along the road. So we are actually taking a lot of space from the carriageway and then, providing the green swale and everything. So for example, this is the metro collar. So we can easily have like a bioswale out here. And this area is basically near Dholakua, which is a very flood prone area. So there they have that huge pipe which is broken in a lot of places and all. So we told them maybe once we do this, you will not need, a pipe. You will be able to actually manage the stormwater right there. This is see, the thing is that this is something we are still experimenting with. So this is a project in Coimbatore in which we have got a swale right in the middle of the, the walking promenade, where we are taking the water into the, bioswale, moving it, and then there is a lake nearby. So then the water goes into the lake. So we don't have like a stormwater drain. So this biosphere is our stormwater drain. So like here I feel the landscape architects can really make a huge difference if we can kind of crack it and maybe talk to the authorities and try to localize the drainage of the stormwater. So some execution stage, how do we go about it? We make the whole street into part plans, and we make the working drawings, details, VOQs. We work with the different consultants, government agencies, RWAs, find a solution. Sometimes you don't have the money, so like in the Aapki Sadak project, we were supported by Shakti Foundation. So like, I think all of us now need to get on with these projects because I feel that there is a momentum now to do, public realm spaces in a more holistic way. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, in fact, Delhi alone has more than 3,000 kilometers of roads. And every city, Ahmedabad has more than 2,000, 2,500 kilometers of roads. I mean, we can't, just handful of landscape architects or handful of urban designers won't be able to reach that scale. So we need more people to even get inspired and get into this stream of improving our urban space, improving our streets.
Should I stop sharing or should I leave it for questions?
Yeah,
I
maybe
think just leave
you
it.
can
I
leave
just
it at
leave,
the sure.
I would say just leave it. If people have questions, you can toggle back and forth to the particular image. So we can open it up for questions. Are you finished presenting? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done. We are done.
So how should we do this? Shall we have people just unmute themselves and ask the question? Then
Yeah.
mute yourself afterwards, please. I just want to, I'll start with a question. You know, it's obvious that we need to be part of this process, landscape architects. And I'm very impressed by both of you being, you know, so embedded in this system and having, you know, you're working, changing streets in India mile by mile, kilometer by kilometer. You're making a big change. But how do we implement that landscape architects now become part of the stream? It becomes, I mean, I know it is in other parts of the world. Why is it that we can't, why is it that we can't, or how is it that we can become more embedded in the system of redesigning India's roads?
Anuj?
Sujata, you want to go first and then I'll say.
No, you go. You go.
I think there's somebody wanting to ask. Somebody unmuting.
It's a very large question, Aditya. We also have been delving into it. So right now, the way it is happening is that the way we have kind of got these projects, whatever we are doing, like some of them are through the smart city project, like the Coimbatore project. Though the smart city project has been quite, criticized and all, but it gave us an opportunity as consultants to work in the public realm. So it also depends on how you approach it. There are a lot of smart city projects which have really not done anything much. But you know, if you have the right, so I think the people need to get into doing public realm design. So you have to engage with the government. We've gone through the grind. Anuj, we all, like whoever is there in this, it's a different system to get into it, and you have to get into it. There's no other way, you know. And what I keep on thinking about is that working with the government helps you to be modest for life. You have to wait outside the government offices and wait for the engineers and the commissioners and everybody, and so there's a different mindset that you require. So I don't know. What I've seen, especially in the architecture field, I've seen that a lot of egos and all are there, you know. So we have to kind of learn how to work with the government and work with each other. There is no other way out. So we are an ecosystem.
Has such a PowerPoint or presentation be made to all the various road planning agencies in Delhi that can then you've already done that?
Yeah.
Very much.
And
very often. In fact, I would like to say that 2009, 10 is when UTPEC was also formulated in DDA, and that time UTPEC made sure that all the agencies kind of came together on trying to appreciate these kind of ideas and then actually mainstream them as much as possible. That's why the UTPEC street design guidelines also came, and then eventually they were kind of adopted by various agencies. It has become like a Bible for them to follow. One thing I would like to add to your answer is that there is so much so that we can do being outside of the system. I would really encourage people to get into the system and actually change and get it from the inside. Like if I can just give you a figure, out of the 3,000 kilometers of roads that Delhi might have, or 4,000 kilometers of roads, about 30 to 40% roads are narrow roads, or they are like small neighborhood roads. They're not even large streets. These 40% or 50% roads can easily be done by the architects who are in-house, by in-house architects who are or landscape architects who are hired by who are part of the system, who are in the Delhi Development Authority or in the Municipal Corporation of Delhi or in the PWD, and they can be done in-house. I mean, you don't even need you don't even need to hire
Yeah.
large landscape firms to do this.
Actually, again, to that point, Anuj, I would like to add, Aditya, there is in New York, the whole, what Anuj showed, the Times Square and all the redevelopment, that has happened in-house. A government department has done it. Even Singapore does all, even the housing department is a government department. So I don't know. There is a structure of the government which is kind of an archaic structure which is here, which like they are changing the education policy. I don't know if they can actually change the government, structure in which people will be encouraged. Bright young minds can be encouraged to actually join the government and really make a difference from inside. That will be great. And we can just be like mentors to them.
Yeah. Like, for example, even our Delhi Development Authority has a landscape department, but the landscape department does not do street designs. I mean, me and Sujata, both are architects. If we can do landscape designs, and definitely the government department can also do. And I don't think they have the mandate, or they
They don't
actually do
have
the
the
street design.
mandate.
Well, yeah, so which I think should be there, because it's again a public space, it's an open space, and can very well be done by landscape architects. Absolutely.
Is Nilima here? Does she have anything? Can she figure out how to get a mandate for themselves? We should approach her and see if this can be pushed.
See,
Maybe we can help them.
DDA is a different department than PWD. PWD
Right.
has the road ownership. So like they have to sort out the thing themselves and then figure it out.
Right. Any other questions? Please unmute yourself. I think someone had a question early on. Please go ahead.
A lot of young landscape architects on the forum. I think you should not hesitate to ask questions.
Yeah, you
Please
can
do.
ask.
There is someone who has asked a question on the chat.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. What is the timeline on these kinds of projects, and is there a single point approval you get in the beginning for a particular project and then you get just going?
Again, the timeline really varies from project to project, and it also depends on who's heading the government at a particular time. So I'm sorry, there is again no straight answer. I can give you examples like the smart city project that we are doing in Coimbatore. That's going very fast, like 2 years. But the Pune project was lying in the waste bin for like 2-3 years before it got revived because the commissioner, who came, new commissioner, he was a very dynamic person. Now he's, I think, the smart city CEO or something. So like it varies. So we just have to keep on working with new agencies, new heads. So again, that bureaucratic system is also quite a challenge.
Someone wants to ask, could you share your experience with respect to JM Road in Pune?
Yeah, so in Pune, the JM Road was So my experience, as in like working on it, it was an amazing experience working on. When we get very good engineers to work with in a particular project, that project kind of enhances itself. So there, Mr. Gujare was the Pune Municipal Corporation engineer. So whatever we used to say, they used to do it. So like and they were like big changes that we had proposed, where all the walkways at grade, and there was a major drainage problem. So how they had to make rerouting of the drainage, all of those things they figured it out, and so it was a very interesting process, and 2 years it took to. So it was a pretty decently fast project. So 2 years is a good time typically for this kind of projects, from start to finish. If the government agencies are interested.
There's another question that says, what's your advice to civil societies, organizations, um, in this particular thing? Citizens groups, what would you advise them to advocate for and cooperate for the success of a street design project?
Citizens group, it depends. Like in Pune, they were not necessarily citizens group, but they were like cycling groups, and like there were some NGOs. They were very proactive. Like Parisar was for cycling, and pedestrian first for for any traffic related issue. So they really helped. But they were technically sound also. But a lot of times, what happens, the citizens group, if they don't, know much about how the redesign can, positively affect a space, is something which they don't have an idea about. So again, in that, what Anuj was saying, the visioning and all is important, that, how you going to, and Anuj is in fact the best at citizen engagement. Nobody better than him. So I think he can answer.
There's another question that says, do you encounter budgetary constraints, let's say going for granite or proprietary finishes?
Anuj, you want to answer or should I answer?
Sure. Well, yes, there are always budget constraints for every aspect, but it depends how you build your case. So, in case one of the things is that you want a non-slippery surface as a start. You don't want people to actually slip off the road. You don't want too many joints so that it is not maintenance friendly. You don't want such a material which actually takes off from the ground from its casings very too often. So you kind of build your case and go step by step. Probably you might work with the simplest of material sometimes, or to the material which is granite. But really speaking, the idea is not to make it like very expensive, really speaking. I mean, of course, applying good material is obviously good, but that's not the idea of making the project very expensive. The idea is that all these street design projects should be very walkable. I mean, they have the pleasure of walking. The street design that I showed from Seoul, the picture I showed from Seoul, that doesn't have any granite material. It's plain concrete actually. And I'll tell you, in many cases, I've seen streets of Europe, which is actually bitumen. It's not even a concrete or any stone. They've actually used bitumen on top of the walking surface. So the material palette is really a very far and wide. What we need to focus on is not really so much on the material itself, but in the continuity, in the maintaining the level of the surface, so that people find it very, very walking friendly. And obviously, it should be maintenance friendly as well.
I want to add something about the budget aspect. Typically what happens is that there is a kind of infrastructure budget which is allocated for a city to do some work and everything. So there is a lot of budget which is allocated for flyovers and underpasses and all. And the contractors also love to do those projects because they are very simple project and a lot of money. Now the projects that we do, like the street design project, is more of nuanced detailing, and so they are like not very happy. The contractors are not very happy doing these projects because it's a totally different kind of a project for them, and and more effort and less money maybe. Uh, they are not happy, and it's very important for the cities to allocate very specific budget for street design instead of flyovers and underpasses and whatever. If they are required, fine, but mostly in the center of the city you should not have highways, as they say, and so.
Some other questions. One is about bioswales along the road. Are they connected to stormwater drains or left open for natural percolation? And the second question connected is, could you please elaborate a little on integrating ecological aspects with street designing?
So bioswale, as I told you, is basically, again, it depends. If we have space along the road where we can give bioswales, which are like longitudinal, we do give. Then eventually, so that it does not overflow, we connect it to the existing drain or to a nearby green area. So like it needs an overflow mechanism also, either to a recharge point. So that's how a biosphere will work. What was the next question?
Any other ecological aspects that you're integrating into street design?
Ecological is, one is water and one is planting. So for the ring road projects, we have already approached Vijay Dasmana for the native trees and plants. He's already given us a list. So we are planning to use, and I think now they have a nursery also. So we are planning to use native as much as possible. So.
Yeah, I think Sujata, you could talk about the water street guideline that you had worked on for UTPEC, the stormwater guidelines. Probably that's a document that anybody could actually refer to and download. It's available on the UTPEC website. Yeah. It's a very, very nice document. It actually talks about.
It is basically just a guidebook in which how you can manage the stormwater locally. We've given an overview. Of course, this was done again like a long time back. So we did a lot of international research and everything. But since the last 5-6 years, we've started applying the concepts on our projects also. When we had made it, we were kind of not yet into practical design mode. So it is. I would encourage all the landscape architects and other architects also to try to manage the stormwater within their sites as much as possible, and then
there's a question on barrier-free design. Does it help or create more problems as two-wheelers generally start using this designated space?
I think we need to be very clear about this issue. I am very sort of verbose about it, even with the government authorities. See, the thing is that you can obviously put barriers, you can put railings, you can put bollards, you can do all kinds of things. You can do hedges, so all kinds of barriers. That really doesn't really make your street very walkable or interesting for pedestrians and for cyclists. So the point is that if you are trying to solve a design issue, a management issue by a design, then you better kind of work with a different stakeholder. Actually, the problem is that sometimes we are only working with one authority, and then that authority is kind of us through and through, say you do this, we can't do that. But this is where a good designer or a good consultant comes in, and they kind of help the authorities not be afraid to talk with other stakeholders, which is the police or the traffic police, and get on board these design projects. Because at the end of the day, they are going to be managing what you design, and what you construct. So it's not a bad idea to get them on board too early on. And in fact, they become your champions as well. In most of the cases, I've seen that traffic police actually becomes your champion, and they, like the example I showed from Vijay Charasta in So traffic police actually and lobbied for that kind of traffic intersection design to the municipal corporation. So I think it's not a bad idea, and it takes a little bit of a courage and a little bit of openness to get a little bit of involvement with other stakeholders, so that they champion your project and also protect it from these kind of issues. Otherwise, if you're only working with one organization who's not managing the street, the traffic, then they're obviously going to be protective about what they are creating, and therefore you will have the requirements of putting barriers.
Uh, Another thing I wanted to add in this is that we as designers, we design something and till the execution is done, and then eventually we leave the project. Now, what happens is these are like, spaces in flux, so there is a management and maintenance issue. That is something uh, which we have to look at in terms of long term. So in the Pune, the JN Road project, there is a 5-year maintenance for the planting and the material. If there is any damage, the contractor is supposed to do that 5-year maintenance, and then maybe they will give it again for another 5 years or whatever. But the management is not yet given to the police or whatever. So certain, cycle track areas, parking and all of those things are happening. So whenever I go to Pune, I keep on, sending them photographs and everything. But it's not like a professional management system which is yet put in place to, so that people don't misuse the space. So it's like an ongoing process.
We have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll keep moving them along. One interesting one goes back to stakeholder participation. They want to hear from Anuj, and there's a lot other questions, which is, let me just read them out for a second. Kindly elaborate on how important is stakeholder consultation and how we should approach the same, as many times projects are derailed due to it. And going back to what Anuj was saying a little bit earlier, I remember seeing a video of a lady, I think it was in Pune, she was getting the two-wheelers off the widened sidewalk and she was making it. Has anyone seen that video? She was getting them all off. She was a stakeholder who had now become a champion of the project. She was a local resident. So Anuj, do you really want to talk a little bit about stakeholder consultation and how important it is, or does it derail the project, or does it strengthen it?
Yeah, see, certainly. I mean, I would say that, if you are fearful that the project is going to be derailed, then it is certainly going to be derailed. So, first of all, we don't have to be fearful of the people, and we don't have to be fearful of engaging with the people. That's the first rule to doing this. If we are open to our ideas, if we are open to their ideas as well, and we are kind of getting them into a dialogue, I have always found out that yes, in a democratic process, there is a little more time spent, because all of this engagement takes a little time. But then at the end of the day, you are making more champions for your own project. I mean, you have to believe in that, first of all, and be open to this stakeholder consultation. I have never faced in my entire life of last 17 years, and I have kind of worked not on just street design. I've worked on housing projects. I've worked on landscape design projects, which are all of them are public in nature. And each time we made a stakeholder consultation, it always went in the direction of the project and never kind of derailed it. So I think we need to be a little more confident about about doing it. And yes, having not, we never know where it is going to go right at the start. So we have to be open about it. We have to keep our vision very, very clear. And that is why I think I talked about visioning right at the start, because whoever you're going to talk to is going to ask you a very simple question: what are you going to do here? Okay, you need to have an answer to that. And if you don't have a convincing answer, he is going to literally bulldoze you with his own questions. So I think it is good to have a vision at first, and then not be very strict about it also, try to kind of explain that vision a little more clearly. Of course, you need to do your homework very nicely for that. You need to do your surveys right. You need to do your designs a little better. But basically, also keep that open window of engaging with them and getting their ideas into this place, because sometimes stakeholders actually have better ideas than we can think about, better solutions than we can think about. So having that openness and engaging with them, I feel is an extremely good deal. I don't believe that the Karol Bagh project could have ever been possible if we had not engaged with the stakeholders right at the start, and even during the process of implementation, process of construction. That was not possible at all. And as I said the last time also, that even now, when there is no public transport and we are allowing one lane of traffic to go in, the stakeholders are still concerned that let's not make it a rule, let's turn it back as soon as possible. I mean, they are the ones who are telling me this, not me telling them. So that's how confidence building happens, and that's how trust building actually it creates more champions for the project, and not really derail it. I mean, derailing does happen, but only happens if you feed them very small data. If you feed them only the data that you think it should be okay for them to know, and where you are fearful that, say, if they learn more, they might expect more, and then they might ask for more. So you're actually trying to design your way through them, which actually derails the project actually. So that has been my experience so far.
Okay, good. That sounds like a very positive answer. I have another question here from Ketki. She says, have you ever approached authorities with design proposals without any prior work or tender or hiring announcement from authority? If yes, do authorities try to do anything about it?
Initially, we have. There have been projects, proposed by us, and one of the projects called South Delhi Greenway, we just made like a Greenway project, and just took it to the MCD commissioner, and he really liked it, and he made it into a project, and in which then he engaged various other agencies like MCD and DDA also. So it kind of became a master plan, but eventually the project did not happen. So that was, till a certain extent, it was a successful project. But this project with Professor Lal called Aapki Sadak, which we did, like we have not had a very positive response like Anuj for the community engagement, where we did have a very good community engagement session, but eventually for the project, the MCD themselves were not, proactively looking at the project to happen on ground. So then it just fizzled out. The project did not happen. So maybe it is because of the MCD and not because of the residents that the project did not happen. So it's like some projects happen and some don't. But off late, most of the projects that we are doing are kind of proposed as from the government side, and then we are looking at.
So there's a change happening from the top also.
Yeah, so there are some advocacy experts. I think Anuj is also an advocacy expert, and other experts like ITTP and WRI and all. So they also engage a lot with the government, and they make packages, and various cities they go to, and then figure out that what are the maybe requirements of a particular city, and then if the city is interested, then they make the overall
even the JM Road project was part of this.
Anuj in fact made the entire RFP where Anuj initially was with ITDP, so he made that entire RFP in which like consultants, urban designers could come in and actually work on certain packages within the city. So JM Road was part of a 30-kilometer package, but till now only 2 kilometers of JM Road and 3 kilometers of FC Road FC Road is happening right now on ground. The rest of now that the commissioner has changed and he's kind of not interested, so the other
Yeah.
roads are not happening.
In fact, this is one place where citizen engagement really happens. Can actually fructify a lot of things, because citizens, if you have, like, for example, the people of Green Park, or people of West Delhi or East Delhi, if they feel strongly about their area, like the Krishna market in the East Delhi, they felt strongly about that area, about their own area, and they approached the government with a certain idea, like, that we need to make this place better. So the government is always, I would here say that we should have a little more trust on our political leaders also, because political leaders are here to also serve the people, and it's not a bad idea to actually approach them, your local councillor or your local MLA, and serve them these kind of ideas, because they're also looking for newer ideas for their own areas which they govern, and any such idea would actually give them also brownie points. So we should be open to even interacting with our political leaders, and serve them these ideas, and certainly, I mean, you never know, they can be taken forward by them, and consultants can be hired, and or they can do it in house, whatever. So I think this engagement is very important.
Sounds like we have to have a separate discussion on this altogether. Right? A separate subject can be, you can explain. I don't think we really got into the meat of it today. The slides you show, the options you show, the feedback you get, how you explain it back. So maybe we could show that as a separate idea. The next question is, may I know your thoughts on the ideas of streets for all in the context of multi-species urbanism?
Okay.
Can multi-species urbanism become a possibility in the long run?
Uh, can I answer, Anuj?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to look at this whole aspect as holistically, where we look at Earth as our ecosystem, and which is a habitat for us humans as well as a habitat for the different species. And every species has their, they make their own habitats. Like penguins have their habitat in near the polar region and so on. Cities are made as habitats for humans, but humans also need other species, like especially trees and birds, to have a more holistic environment for them to thrive in a more positive way in a city. So, and it is also important for humans not to expand their footprint too much into the various habitats of other species. Like the way we keep on expanding our cities, like for example, Delhi goes into Gurgaon and further on, and further on and further on. So that is like worse than actually, building our cities more dense and, and also look at the habitable aspects for the humans. So I don't know about the multi-species. I guess if you make it more habitable for the humans and birds and, the domesticated animals and everything, I think it's okay. But I would not like to have like a cheetah movie on my streets, of course.
We have a couple of interesting questions coming up. Do you have a business, Anuj, do you have a business model for cities to be able to adopt something that aims to cover the OPEX, if not the CAPEX? Please throw some light on how the financial returns from street projects could be made attractive. I just want to just couple that with another question, which says, are we taking any steps to disseminate the lessons learned and bring it to the attention of the public to build consensus for similar schemes to take place? I think those are connected questions. Maybe you could answer them together. Is there a cost effectiveness to us Is there financial benefit to us that can be explained to people so more of this could be adopted?
Okay. Well, it's a good question. I would I would begin by saying that, if you're looking at water supply for a city, if you're laying down a drainage line for a city, you don't really look at the cost of that drainage line because it's a fundamental essential for that city or the residents of the people. Similarly, footpaths are that fundamental because you can't really run a city, you can't really run a whole place, a neighborhood without having footpaths or a city in a city. So it's as fundamental as laying a water pipe or a drainage line. So I think any kind of capital cost or any kind of OPEX expectation out of a footpath, I don't think is the right way to look at it. And in case the government is looking at it that way, then it is our duty to tell the government that this is maybe not the right way to perhaps look at it. But having said that, there are certain opportunities as well. uh, uh, we look at, unfortunately, even in a single municipal department, a municipal corporation, we have different verticals and different account heads, and different account heads actually do not merge with each other if needed. Say for example, if one vertical is making a little more money, it will never give money to the other vertical head if the other vertical is not making money. So this is another place of work where designers and professionals can actually pitch in and try to do that. Why? Because one of the biggest money makers or biggest money churners on the street is the parking. I will just give you a small example of the Karol Bagh experiment again. In the Karol Bagh experiment, we are looking at 18 kilometers of redoing of the roads. The PWD has already begun construction of those 18 kilometers. The parking requirement, obviously, in those 18 kilometers were close to 24,000 vehicles in a single day. So what we did was we actually made a parking management system for that entire place. That parking management system is going to give us about 4,80,000 rupees per day. 4,80,000 rupees per day from parking. That is only charging 10 rupees per day, 10 rupees per hour. No, actually, I converted it 10 rupees per day. Actually, we made a very conservative calculation. So that's 4,80,000 rupees per day from 24,000 vehicles, and that actually amounts to 17 crore rupees a year. 17 crore rupees a year from a very conservative parking charge for that entire area. The whole project cost of 18 kilometers of roads is 20 crore rupees. So you can actually earn back 17 crore rupees in a single year. And in 2 years, actually, you have enough money to even deploy guards, to even deploy good trees. You can deploy good lighting. You can improve your benches. You can improve your infrastructure. If there are repairs, you can actually make fantastic repairs to the roads. So all of that is possible because there's one pot of money which you're creating also at the same time. Unfortunately, at this point, our accounting systems are such that one pot of money does not reach the other vertical, and that's why there's disconnect. So the parking guys will never give money to the street guys to help maintain them. But I think that's the integration we also need at the institutional level, so that they can cross fertilize each other, and therefore this issue of not having money as money as being the hurdle is removed for the longer run.
Great. So now we just have one last question and then we'll start wrapping up because we've been doing, I'm sure you guys are getting tired. It's about 4:30. One question is, has space syntax been used for urban transport analysis in India? Can we be used to further the cause of pedestrianization?
I don't know what that means.
So Netra, do you want to explain your question?
Yeah, space syntax, it is a program, like you can use it to see how many roads are used in what ways. And it shows that these particular roads have so many connections with other roads, and that is why this road is being used the most. and the other roads are being used less, and like you just you can
That's
see the,
interesting. Yeah, I'd
yeah.
love to look at it. We haven't yet looked at it, but just an extension of that thought. I would like to add whenever we are given a project to design a street, we are also given a kind of set of requirements that we are supposed to fulfill, as in you have to do the vehicular counts, you have to do the pedestrian counts, and you have to look at what capacity of street is getting used by the vehicles, and what later on after 4 years what is going to happen. So it is a very vehicular centric study that we have to do. Instead, we should change the lens of the studies in such a way that we look at the usability of a particular space, how a person uses it, and what is the origin of a person and what is the destination. So OD surveys are more important than how many vehicles are in a street. So to figure out the capacity of the street right now, and what if it's going to happen after 3 years or 5 years, enhanced capacity. Like if you, for example, look at this time during COVID, hardly anybody is using, very few vehicles are getting used, and in Bangalore, people are asking for cycle tracks, segregated cycle lanes kind of thing. So it is about what do you prioritize in terms of allocation of the street to which use.
I believe in England they're changing certain streets now, making them pedestrianization right now because of this. People are asking for them, and yeah.
May I just comment on that? I'm a landscape architect practicing in England, and the city I live in has converted one of the main trunks, and some of the main roads in the city have gone from 2 lanes one way to 1 lane and 1 cycle lane. And it has made a lot of difference in how people are using those roads and the uptake on cycling. But that's a very specific example.
Yeah.
You have a question to Akash? You want to articulate that yourself?
Just in terms of, there were lots of strands in your presentation that I thought, that's something quite useful to discuss. But just in terms of one thing I would wanted to comment on was the role of road allocation, and how the road can be changed from quite a wide carriageway to making space for different elements across the street. And one thing I have noticed is when we take off, I think you probably mentioned in your presentation about the whole road length and stuff. But if you take away a road lane, a vehicular lane, it actually starts to change people's habits on how they use road, and that in turn reduces the or increases the capacity for different people using the same space for different elements.
True. This is what the if generally people, the common or local or even engineers don't understand. So it is like we have to make them go through these various graphics and various other tools to make them understand that by reducing the capacity or streamlining the capacity of the road, you're making it more efficient and you're making it more equitable for the other users. So that is it's like a challenge to even convince them. So it is like an ongoing process that we have to go through. In fact, in UK and all, it will be better, but here it's.
There's challenges here of a different kind, because it all sort of comes to, like, if somebody, a city is proposing something, then there's be political pushback on why is this happening without proper public consultation. But this is being termed as a temporary measure during the COVID crisis, that we have changed this road because there's less traffic on the road. But then hopefully there'll be studies done on this to inform the public opinion going forward, and saying, okay,
this is a very good opportunity, time for experimentation, because of the less traffic. So we can actually, maybe parts of Connaught Place areas where there was parking lots earlier, if there is a restaurant nearby, so the restaurant can have an outdoor eating there, so like all of those things can be experimented right now. But then again, like we are just, as Anuj said, we are just a handful of people and we don't have that kind of bandwidth to go everywhere. So we need more hands.
So we'll last question is from Aditi Agarwal. She says, how can younger graduates become a part of designing public spaces and gain experience with the government sector? As in, what are the platforms where we can apply? There are not many opportunities for 1-2 year experienced architects and designers.
Join the government.
Which department, Anuj?
Any department which is related to architecture, design, planning. You can just go and join any department, preferably municipal corporation or BWD. I mean, whoever is designing roads and is concerned with neighborhoods, urban spaces, you can just join them. I think this is a very good question, and it's a good way to end this conversation, that we need more professionals inside the government, actually, because at most of the time, even the struggle that me and Sujata have to do, being outside of the government, it would not have been done, even with large projects, if there were people inside the government who were actually championing it. And you will still need consultants for larger projects or for typical projects, but to convince the government for smaller things like the width of the footpath or the height of the footpath and the continuity of the footpath, I mean, those things, those are not the battles you want to fight. You want to basically create a good urban space, and that's the kind of that's where your attention should go, not in fighting these smaller battles.
I want to add
these smaller battles we fight.
So basically, for the young budding professionals, I feel that when we were young and budding, we had a very clear intent, that we want to work in the public realm space. We did not know anything. We stumbled our way through the entire process. But I think now, more and more people, you can kind of look up to us as, first generation kind of people who look at public spaces. So what I wanted to start was that you have to have an intent that I want to work, in the public realm. And then you find your way around. It's like, it's like the whole cosmos kind of works for you to kind of find your way through. So your intent should be there and you'll find the way. So, but you have to work hard at it. What I've seen is for the young generation, especially, that they don't have the, that tenacity, which I think our generation, the, what are we called? Generation X or whatever. Yeah. So, you have to have that tenacity. You guys are really exposed to a lot of information, but you have to have that drive to follow a dream, to follow something, hone your skills, work at it, and, something will come out of it. But then that intent should be clear, that you have to, engage.
Well, as a follow-up, what I'd like to say is there's 3-4 thoughts in my head. One is that we would like from the two of you a list of places to see in Delhi, and when the lockdown is kind of less severe or people are moving around more easily, we want to be able to visit. So if you could now start thinking of places we can go see as the iSolar group. Secondly, we have an ongoing exhibition, online exhibition, iSolar exhibition, Delhi iSolar has. And I would like to say, is there a possibility to have this theme of this month the month of August be public space or street design. If you could suggest to us, and Sunetra will then, and we want people to take photographs, sketches, ideas, and we have this going on and submit them to ISOLA. So if you could help us with that. The third is, I think we really need to publish an article on the subject. ISOLA Delhi could publish an article on the subject. I don't know what the platform is, India Today, or what magazine people read, or online. I don't think we've, this PowerPoint and all these beautiful images, if they could be published as an article somewhere, or even in our Facebook page, ISOLA Facebook page, or on Twitter. I think we need to disseminate the subject more. Besides this great presentation today. So if we'll have a follow-up, maybe you, me, and Anuj and our group, to see how we can take this forward. In fact, is there a possibility you see any other third seminar we can have on the subject where people could come forth with some places and we could have a discussion on them? Maybe people could submit them in advance, and then we could select some and see which are good examples where things could happen. Is there
So maybe, if people are interested, they can kind of select a space in a city. They have the Google Earth maps. They can click a few snaps of that space. Then we can actually have an online discussion about what are the various aspects. So they can create a short analysis on a particular, space or a street or whatever. We can have a back and forth discussion. So this was more like initial for people to understand what does a street design entail. But you have to basically dig into the whole process. Till then, you'll not understand, what is the right of way, what is the width of the street, what is the length, how much. And you, luckily at this time, you have Google Earth. So a lot of, simple things can be done on Google Earth. So.
My suggestion is people should submit some typical spaces. Someone suggested Palam the other day, our last thing, and we go through them. We choose one, and then we all attend. And you guys can mark up. On Zoom, you can even mark up. You can say this cone become tighter. We could do this, make this space into a public space. We could actually do a drawing together as a collective drawing, or maybe a set of collective drawings, and then take pictures, and then someone could draw them up. We could do a collective group process, which would be fun.
Yeah. Why don't we do for Palam the next time?
Okay,
and,
we'll take it up. I don't know much about it, but someone who suggested that, is that person here in this room today? No, someone else is.
Romi had suggested. She must have left, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let everyone give their suggestions. There are about 40 people here still. Everyone can give their suggestions as a follow-up to the emails you got or on the ISOLA WhatsApp group. We'll collect them. We'll look at the spaces, and then we'll choose the right one, and we'll have a workshop on that, online workshop, where everyone can draw on the same drawing, and we can see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be interesting.
Any other comments from anyone? Any other last comments from anyone? From the speakers?
I hope we were useful.
It was totally interesting. It was a fascinating subject. I have a feeling that we don't know more about it. I want to delve more into it. Today we scratched the surface, and I think we have a real learning opportunity for us, all of us here in the room and in Delhi, to learn more about the subject. And I think we really need to go deeper into the subject. So thank you both for attending us, for helping and attending with us and teaching us. So that was a wonderful session. And I thank all the ISOLA members here today. That was a great thing that you all came and you kept up for a 2-hour session and you enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it. You can unmute yourself and tell us if you enjoyed it.
Or show your faces.
Show your faces and a thumbs up or something. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Purnima.
Thanks, guys. So we will be loading this onto our website. We will be uploading this onto the Facebook page and also onto the ISOLA website. And I invite all of the ISOLA members to come and participate more in our group effort to make our local community stronger. We're trying to create a group project here. We're all trying to strengthen ourselves and each other. So please participate, write comments on our Isola WhatsApp group. You've noticed that we've really added everyone onto it now. We have a lot of conversation going. And so please, I invite everyone to be more active in our local chapter. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to end the meeting here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.